So some of you may be asking at this point, why does this have to be a special playthrough on weekends that's twice as long as the usual parts that we upload?
Monday.
Hey, it's my birthday!
The reason for that is, there's been one thing that's been keeping me from seriously doing a playthrough of the Persona series, of any game in the Persona series that I'm familiar with, on this channel, and it's the first 3 hours of any given Persona game. These games have very slow starts, mostly because they're trying to explain why these normal-ass teenagers in a normal-ass world have to deal with all this not-normal stuff, and it takes a while to set that stuff up, even when you pull out the
Just
media
eat
res.
it. Eat it.
I didn't think it was bad as Persona 4, though. It took forever.
Really feels the same to me.
It's the same length. It's the same length as Persona 4 and Persona 3. The reason it feels a little more fast-paced in the beginning, at least on your first playthrough, is because more interesting stuff happens in Persona 5's 3-hour opening than in Persona 4, which was basically just 3 hours of country life chill.
Yeah, I can agree with that. They got into it way more.
Yeah. Persona 5 doesn't take quite as long to get into the supernatural elements of the story, and and the stuff that's happening in the real world is generally more ambiguous and, a bit more anxious, a bit more uncertain. All this, you're being falsely accused of a crime stuff going around.
Gonna be late if you get lost. Dude, I have all the time in the world. I'm an RPG protagonist.
Also, there's more actual gameplay in the opening, and by actual gameplay, I mean you get to experience a video game simulation of what it's like to get lost in a train station.
In Tokyo, yeah. Admittedly, I did get lost.
Everyone got lost this first time, okay? Every blind playthrough that I've seen of this game from launch has gotten lost in the goddamn train station. I got lost in the goddamn train station, and I already seen someone play it. So, yeah.
They really made Japanese life that accurate with the big train stations.
Yeah. But, one thing that Persona 5 has going for it over 3 and 4 is making Japanese life feel authentic kind of feeling, which I don't usually get outside of the Yakuza series. And if anyone has played the Yakuza series, which I would recommend starting with Yakuza 0 if you haven't, but if anyone's played those games, it's kind of interesting how much playing the game feels like a wacky tourist trip to Tokyo at times. Like, if you made your tourism destination the seediest part of the city anyway.
Shinjuku.
Is that kid in the car playing one of those most elusive of all things, a PlayStation Vita?
Well, Vitas are more popular in Japan than they are here.
They do exist.
Well, portable gaming in general is the way to go in Japan right now. The console market is really kind of suffering because Japanese lifestyle is just so centered around commuting and stuff that it makes more sense to play on your phone or play on a portable device.
Also, that was a missed opportunity for the advertisement for the Big Bang Burger to not have Vegeta on there.
Yeah. Now, one thing I will say about this game is that even though you have the quick travel function that was introduced in Persona 4 and then sort of transplanted into 3 in the portable version, there's a lot of ground to cover when you're actually exploring the different areas of Tokyo. In fact, there's so much ground to cover that they didn't... I guess they chickened out a bit on introducing it all right away. So, you don't get to go to, one or two of the other regions of Tokyo until the midpoint of the game.
Yeah.
Like Akihabara.
Yeah, Akihabara isn't introduced until, I think, Futaba's section of the game, or maybe somewhat before that, not sure.
And then other locations you can only go to if you're doing social link stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, there are a lot of hangout spots where you get, special events with your confidants that make the in-between rank section of hanging out with them a lot more interesting than it used to be. But then there's also just generally a lot more places to explore. Anyway, here's a little Easter egg. Get ourselves Rise Kujikawa on her own poster, and whatever her name was from Dancing All Night is the other character on there that cycles through.
Kanami Mishida.
Oh yeah, her.
I keep making a joke on Twitter about her by using the hashtag #FuckKonami. Like, as soon as I played Persona 4 for the first time, like, 2 years ago, I was tweeting about Persona 4, and Rise mentioned how, like, Konami's getting all the attention now. Everyone's talking about Konami, and I'm just like, oh man, fuck Konami.
Anyway, I sort of got lost, even though I've played this before. But yeah, that's where you're supposed to
Never
go.
let Lewis drive.
I do like that this is like a mandatory thing, though, because I do like the idea of adding that as a gameplay element that, yeah, players are probably going to get lost trying to find their way to the school, and you don't ever have to do this ever again. You can just, like, directly warp to the school after this point, but it adds to the disorientation of moving to a new city and having the main character just kind of be, like, lost in this world he knows nothing about, you know?
Yeah. In Persona 3, you had a girl from your class who took you to school so you didn't have to find your way, and in Persona 4, you live in this hick-ass country town where, like, if you get lost, that's your own damn fault. But yeah.
Who are you talking about?
But if you're worried, people who haven't played Persona 5, you can just instantly warp to the school. Well, first off, it always automatically takes you to the school, but if you ever want to go back to, you know, the area where Cafe LeBlanc is, you can just instantly warp there, so it's no big deal.
Yeah, the only time I really used the trains was during this part, and you just fast travel for everything else.
In the hospital now.
Well, technically, you use the trains every time you fast travel, which is actually
Well, I mean,
important
like,
to
actually
remember.
going to the train station to actually ride the train.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important to remember that you use the trains to fast travel, because if you fast travel to a place that isn't on a line you have a free pass for, you have to pay a little bit of money. Which I thought was a nice touch. I mean, it's never enough money that it really matters, and it gives you that little dash of realism. You're traveling around a city. You aren't just fast traveling around Cyrodiil because you can't be bothered to walk anywhere because everything is too big. Or maybe I'm just projecting.
Hyrule is just too damn far. I need to warp to all the shrines.
You don't know pain until you've tried to actually walk from point A to point B in Oblivion, where everything is copy-paste grasslands. Ugh.
I wonder if there's actually any Persona players who choose not to warp to anything. I wonder, do you actually, like, manually walk from school to home in the game because you want to really get involved with the world that way? I'm not sure, but...
Well, sometimes I will do it to talk to the NPCs around, because their dialogue does change throughout the game.
Yeah, and sometimes you can spot, like, Goro Akechi somewhere and have a conversation with him, so it is kind of... Plus, there's this great thing with Makoto that if you're just warping around with... If you're just warping around, you don't see this really great detail that Makoto's kind of spying on you at one point.
Yeah, it's great.
Hello, waifu number one.
I'm in my head. When I first played this, I was really in my character's thoughts, and for some reason I was like, "Wow, wait! For a second, I thought this girl was Catherine." But no, it's not. Sorry, it didn't.
Oh no!
I thought you were someone else. Wait, no, that sounds like I'm hitting on you. I swear, I actually thought you were someone else.
No, but, like, her costume on the Catherine DLC really fits her well.
What's wrong with your face, man?
Joe Chin is here. Yeah, I didn't think anyone else in this chat would get that one.
You could cut someone with that chin.
That was a Parappa the Rapper reference.
Yeah. Also, dude, your chin is almost good enough to be a superhero.
Yeah.
He talks!
Why do I get the feeling this blonde guy's going to one-punch me to the moon? That was a voice actor joke, by the way.
I don't even watch anime and I get it.
You planning on ratting me out to Kamoshida?
Anyway, slight break in tradition here. Usually your partner character, the first male student that you meet, is the Magician Arcana student, and he's kind of an idiot. Ryuji is kind of an idiot, but he is the Chariot Arcana character.
Well, at least he's not running into me in a trash can.
Yeah. Which actually puts him more in the Chie Satonaka position in terms of traditional party member roles, really. The reason this is significant, though, is because the Magician Arcana is kind of the partner card to the Fool, and the Fool is always the main character. It's one of those things that seeps into pop culture, where there's always a magician-like character playing sidekick to a fool-like hero. It's just that, you know, Persona does it more literally because the characters have actual cards attached to them.
Never seen you before, though.
Can you explain why our pants are plaid, though?
You a transfer student?
Because school uniforms in Japan are stupid.
No wonder you don't know him.
That doesn't explain why my pants are plaid.
Ain't too bad.
I've never seen plaid Japanese school uniforms.
Well, they've got all sorts of uniforms over there, so, I mean, the stereotypical one is the sailor girl outfit.
The middle
but
school ones.
Yeah, the school uniforms in Japan are actually very diverse. They try to give every school an identity. Not every student, every school. That's the identity that matters socially, I suppose. But I do like the color scheme of this uniform here. It really fits the tone of the game and the characters. Also, the school's name is a word that means prisoner. This sort of ruins a joke earlier in the game, last part, where Sojiro says you're going to Shujin, but because Shujin can mean prison, your character does a double take and asks, "Wait, where?" And
It also
Sojiro-
doesn't help that for a lot of kids, school feels like prison.
No, it's like it's a pun that did not make the translation at all, because
Different language and all that.
Yeah, in Japanese it sounds like Sojiro might have said prison, and your character was double checking. Whereas in the English version, it just kind of seems like he did a Solid Snake. Metal Gear? No. Well. Anyway, yeah, instead of a television set, our magical link to the magical world is a mobile phone app, because we're all hip with the kids and stuff. It's funny, because the CRT television was supposed to be hip with the kids in Persona 4, too. And I guess Persona 3 was hip with the kids because the plot involved staying up late.
Well, you're also staying up late in Persona 4 watching the Midnight Channel.
And the main character from 3 had some bitchin' headphones, let me tell you.
Come the wrong way, though.
Those headphones are actually really awesome.
Why is there a castle in the middle of Tokyo?
What's going on here? I guess we'll just
I actually like clip-on headphones more than earbuds. They feel more comfortable, and they don't get all earwaxy when you leave them in for a while.
Yeah, I like earbuds too because they're big, poofy, and they tell everyone to fuck off.
Okay. Anyway, yeah, instead of the Midnight Channel, we have the Metaverse. Oh god, Disney has taken over the world.
That's
Plot
perfect
twist.
because, like, Disney is really popular in Japan.
We do have our popular mascot character.
There's a theme park that you can go to as a hangout spot, and it comes up in the plot as well, called Destinyland, which is basically not Disneyland. And they even have, like, these not Mickey Mouse ears that people wear when they're there.
But what about Universal Studios Japan?
Fuck them.
where do we end up? The sign was for the school, right?
So, yeah, this is the part where the game starts to get really unsubtle, because the school turns into a castle because this one teacher guy thinks of it as his castle, and the game feels the need to remind you about this 5 or 6 times.
Man, your costume's impressive.
I don't know, I guess they
Armor real?
didn't think you'd get the symbolism if they didn't hammer it into your brain.
Hey,
Which is a slightly irritating thing about the way this game tells its story, is it will constantly explain itself, constantly. And, you know, I had a problem with that in Catherine too, where, you know, the woman with the big-ass fro only exists to tell you what the story means.
we gotta run.
Okay.
Stop standing around and run.
So, the supernatural elements are starting. There are these big people with armor and swords.
You mean this isn't part of Japanese high school life?
You're gonna break the rules, damn it. The hell you
I'm kind of baffled that Ryuji would even think that this is the inside of the school. Because, like,
He's
the
kind of an
layout.
idiot.
Yeah, but the layout is completely different, and you can sort of understand the main character making this mistake because he's not familiar with the place. He's been there all of one time for 10 minutes.
Even still, it'd be a little big of a logic stretch to be like, huh, I didn't expect the school to look like a castle. That's weird.
Yeah, it's like he steps in and is like, what, are they having some sort of medieval fair? Like, you could think of it, they're having some sort of Renaissance fair for a festival or something. That's something Kurusu could maybe think. Ryuji lives here. He goes to school here every day. He should know that that staircase doesn't belong there.
Yeah, more or less.
Anyway, I said that this introduction area is about as long as the 3-hour one for Personas 3 and 4, but one of the things that it does do right is that it gets you into some low-level dungeon play fairly early on.
I know there's someone out there.
Whereas in Persona 4, you had your awakening scene in your tutorial battle, and then you were back in the real world and more cutscenes were happening. There's actually some, running around in a dungeon. An actual dungeon.
Well, we are in a dungeon, alright.
Yeah.
Kinda. I still feel until you get, like, Anne, and, like, after you get Anne, not the day you get Anne, but until you get Anne, and then you actually go back to the castle, it always just feels like hand-holding tutorial dungeon, which it's not as fun as, like, the first time you're actually in the dungeon of Persona 4 going after Yukiko, because that actually felt like it wasn't holding your hand, it was just you finally playing the game, whereas this game, it feels like it's leading you by the hand a little bit too much at the beginning, where it's like, you have to explain how, we have to explain how to sneak up on people. We have to explain what all-out attacks are. We have to explain this. And it's just like, can I just play the game? I know they got to explain everything, obviously, but...
Yeah, and that threw me off in this new game plus in at least one place that you're going to see while I'm recording. But, like, the all-out attack is disabled until the tutorial happens for it. Yeah. So I thought, like, if I knock everyone down, I can do an all-out attack. But then it didn't happen. I'm like, what the fuck?
The exact same thing happened to me.
And that bugs me, because Persona 3 had a tutorial for its all-out attack, but it didn't stop you from doing all-out attacks before the tutorial popped up.
Say what?
Harsh.
Now, Persona 4 was about facing the shadows of some fairly decent people. It wasn't until the end of the game that you got to see a sneak peek of what the shadow of a legitimately horrible person might be like, and that was when you were confronting the goddamn culprit. But Persona 5 dives headfirst into the cesspool of bullshit that you would probably hear from a suppressed shadow of a legitimately terrible person who is trying to make excuses for why he was the way he was. And not all of the boss enemies are shadows of evil people. There are a few outlying exceptions, like, ironically, the point in the game where you would have been fighting Adachi before is the point where you fight a shadow of an actual pretty good person.
I like how the bar to the door is covering up is going to make you think he's actually naked at first under there. Also, dude, huge castle, overly over-the-top outfit you're wearing. Are you compensating for something much, dude?
More than likely.
Now, there are some times when I'm watching the cutscenes for this game where the animation just looks a little too smooth for me, but then I remember, oh, right, this isn't Persona 4, there's actual mocap going on now. I mean, there are still some pretty stock and generic animations in there, here and again, but a lot of the specific animations for cutscenes are motion captured, whereas basically every animation in Personas 3 and 4 was, like, drawn out of a hat of, like, maybe 10 to 20 stock animations for basic actions. Like, it's always the same sitting down animation with Persona 4, but here they have a specific sitting down animation for a specific scene, and it looks super, super slick and smooth.
Where'd your energy from earlier go?
Here we go. It's time for the big dramatic awakening sequence.
I'll have you killed right now.
Why is your cape full of hearts?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, this is the first time I noticed the hearts all over his cape too, and I'm like, what? And then, like, at certain points during the cutscene, his cape spreads open and you realize he's naked under there, and I'm like, oh.
No, he's got
like a little
pink.
He's got like a little
Pink
Thong.
Yeah,
he's got a thong, basically. He's wearing a Speedo and shoes, and that's all he's got.
Classy. Very classy.
And I'm like, oh, I already know this shadow is going somewhere awful. And the fun thing about it is, it's like a direct polar opposite to Yukiko from the first from not for the first game. Why am I saying the first game? The fourth game from Persona 4. But like where that was an expression of her waiting around for someone to rescue her and just, going into a really exaggerated negative interpretation of it. This is, a really goddamn literal interpretation of the logical extreme that this guy is going to.
He's the king of the school.
There are two things about the personas in this game. Number one, the awakenings are goddamn terrifying, because, they're really painful looking. Which is not true of the other games.
At least for the earlier ones, with the imagery.
The other thing is that the personas in this game are a lot chattier than they used to be. Not only do you hear the things that your party members hear when they awaken, which didn't happen in 3 and 4, but you also, Arsene, the first persona that your main character gets, has several points throughout the game, including the tutorial immediately after this, where he'll actually say stuff to the player, or to the player character. It's hard to tell which.
Yeah, this is the most chatty they've been since 1 and 2, because they talked a lot in 1 and 2 as well. Like, they would always go, I am thou art I will form a bond with you, blah, blah, blah. And
in Persona 2, I think, the only time you really heard the other party members' personas was when you were fighting their shadows. And if you happened to have your character's ultimate persona equipped at the time, they would say something to the shadow, and the shadow would summon the evil version of that persona, and they would say something back. And if you beat them like that, that persona would lose a weakness and gain a nullification of that element. But here, they're actually all pretty chatty.
Ow!
Yeah, I remember this was the first thing they ever showed at the game, this part here.
Yeah. And, it was really bizarre, too. Because,
Persona.
Originally, I thought that was, the point where your main character would fight his shadow. And I'm like, what? Your main character fights his shadow? Is it because he's a criminal after all? But no, it's actually, their eyes turn yellow when they summon their persona for the first time.
Another interesting thing about this game's personas is that they're all based off of actual criminals versus more mystical stuff.
The theme that the personas here run with is the first level persona for every character is an outlaw or a thief of some kind from literature or history, and when they transform into a super persona later on, an ultimate persona, they're actually mythological tricksters.
Lupin the Third.
Anyway, our main character's persona is Arsène Lupin, the gentleman thief who was invented by who's written by Maurice LeBlanc, the guy the cafe is named after, Maurice LeBlanc. And the fun thing about that is that Arsène Lupin was written as a kind of, well, it's kind of the first example of bullshit fan fiction, because in the original Arsène Lupin novel, Sherlock Holmes appeared without permission. Arthur Conan Doyle objected, and his name was changed to Herlock Sholmes.
Clearly not a ripoff. Or clearly not
the game actually brings this up during one of its class lectures. It's hilarious. But yeah, you're playing the direct opposite, the self-styled rival to a famous detective mystery character in the game immediately after the detective's story. And nobody in Persona 4 had Sherlock Holmes as a persona at any point, but it's kind of the point where the game is deliberately drawing a line between 5 and 4.
One thing I like about Persona 5, all the enemies are actually the personas you're going to be collecting like it was in 1 and 2, and they've brought back negotiations and stuff. You're not just fighting nameless shadows, and then you find a card of a persona or something,
What do you mean I can't just use a Pokeball?
They never, like, explicitly explain it, but there is an implied reason why these particular shadows take the form of demons from the Shin Megami Tensei universe rather than the more abstract shadows that we've gotten used to seeing in 3 and 4. It's like they're shapes, they're forms that are taken out of the collective unconscious and drawn into shadows by the specific shadows that rule the palaces. So they're shadows, but they're also different from the shadows that we've seen in the other 2 games. And when when these other shadows take their boss forms later on, they take demon forms as well. So it's interesting to think about from a meta standpoint, I think.
What was that just now? And you're
Could you close that cape, man? I don't want to see your pink thong.
back to normal. You bastards! This is effing nuts.
Now, I'm actually somewhat surprised that they went to the trouble of making Kamoshida look kind of disgusting under his cape. Like, I get that's the effect that they're going for, but if anyone has an excuse to look really ripped, it would be the Olympic medalist athlete, so...
I guess so. You don't want to make it too subtle for people who are getting... If this is their first ever Persona game, you want to make it very clear that, like, he's wearing this pink Speedo underneath, because, you know, deep down this guy thinks he's some kind of Lothario type who gets all the girls, when in reality it's just the complete opposite, and it's supposed to be just a big juxtaposition between the actual person and...
Yeah.
I suppose he could have been more ripped, I suppose, but, you know...
Think we could jump across, dude? It's like 2 feet.
I'm just saying, it makes sense for the character, but at the same time, it also doesn't make sense for the real-world person. The shadow itself takes that form, obviously, because it's more important for it to be a representation of his psyche rather than an accurate representation of the person. And that's one thing that you gotta understand when it comes to personas, that the shadows represent the people they're attached to, but they're not literal interpretations of the people. They are very cartoonishly exaggerated versions of the people. So, like...
So why isn't he just like all chin then?
They're cartoonish representations of psychological things that those people feel and think about the world and about themselves. So you get stuff like Yukiko at the beginning of Persona 4. She's like a princess in a castle because she lives at a traditional Japanese inn and is conflicted about taking over the family business, and sort of fantasizes about someone dashing coming to town and taking her away. It's not that she really wants... It's not that she really thinks of herself as a princess. She just... It just took that particular shape when her shadow manifested. It's the same with the bad guys, but when you're doing it for a bad guy, what you get is cartoonish, ridiculous evil. And...
the best kind.
Yeah, this has thrown 1 or 2 people off about the game. Like, there are some people... I think the most famous example is probably Yahtzee, who don't really get the dividing line between the shadow and the person in the real world, and they think that the villains themselves are cartoonishly evil when it's really... They're an understandable kind of evil, but you're fighting a cartoonish exaggeration of them. So, yeah. That's... What is that thing that he's wearing on his head?
Helmet.
Like, is that supposed to be a Man in the Iron Mask reference, or...
Eh.
I don't get it. Like, I can't get a closer look at it either, because it's over across the water. And I don't think you see those metal masks ever again in the dungeon either.
What's wrong with the statue's face?
It's Kamoshida's face, that's what's wrong with it. Kamoshida's face is wrong with everything.
Well, damn.
Alright, and now we're being introduced to party member number 2.
It's our adorable mascot character.
Yes, indeed, but unfortunately and fortunately, Morgana is nowhere near the same as Teddy.
You're not soldiers of this castle, right?
Well,
You're not going to ask me to make a contract and become a magical persona, right?
Morgana is one of the smartest characters in the game, although he does have a few emotionally immature moments from time to time, and he has garnered an unfortunate reputation for telling you to go to sleep when you don't want to, because Morgana becomes your sort of eternal partner throughout the game.
Hey!
And
Hey!
yeah, yes, Morgana becomes the Navi, and
You've been playing this game for quite a while. Make sure to take a break.
Well, fortunately, Morgana never says that. But the thing about Morgana is that he becomes a mouthpiece for all of the stuff that would be your character's thoughts, if Morgana wasn't there. And there are even times when, during the game, Morgana will be gone for a day or two at specific plot points, and your character will start thinking the things that Morgana would have said anyway. But, the effect that this has is unfortunate because it feels like it's taking control away from the player when it's actually not. It's just giving you the same messages that you would have gotten in any other Persona game, except it feels like it's coming at you from a third party, and that makes it feel more intrusive. It's a weird psychological thing that they tripped over when they made
It's also a
this
thing with Persona 5 where I feel like more than Persona 4 and 3, they take a lot of days away from you to have a lot more plot, to have a lot more exposition and stuff. And
Yeah.
so it feels like you go like a week or 2 weeks, well not 2 weeks, but it feels like sometimes you go through like a week worth of activity not doing anything, and it gets kind of like, I want to get to my side quests, I want to get to my gameplay here, and this cat won't let me do anything.
Thanks, Morgana.
It's weird because the game's pacing is really good overall, but it does it in a weird way where the only times you really have free reign over your calendar schedule are the times when there's a timer displaying in the top corner of the screen, when it tells you exactly how many days you have left until you won't have time anymore. Apart from that, like during the cutscene days, sometimes they'll let you go out at night and get in some extra social linking there, but otherwise it's not really like. They tightened the design of the game better, but they wrapped it in a series of design choices that make it feel intrusive where it's actually not. It's a case where the game kind of mind tricks you into thinking it's more restrictive than it actually is. It's bizarre.
I like Persona 5, but I would disagree that the pacing is the best it's been. I think Persona 4 had a little bit of better pacing. I think sometimes the exposition, some of the scenes that happen in between dungeons can go on just a little bit too long, and I feel like they could use their time a little bit better, honestly.
Maybe, but the thing that got me about those sequences is that it always made sense why things were taking days at a time. Like, I got the feeling that if they had squeezed these events down into fewer days, the sequence of events in the plot would have felt rushed and unrealistic. So,
Dude, this guy's not wielding 3 swords.
What?
One Piece reference. His Morgana's persona is Zoro.
What's that got to do with One Piece?
I don't watch anime.
Well, I don't watch One Piece, so I have no idea what that's about.
The main swordsman and the first person Luffy recruits, his name is Zoro.
Huh. Yeah, that's...
Also,
Somehow we get the
One Piece
feeling
is
that's
like
not the pop culture reference being made here.
Yeah, I know. I'm just joking.
Every boss theme in this game is great. Every one of them.
Yeah, this theme is called, I think, Willpower. It's not so much a boss theme, but it is the Awakening theme. It's the theme that plays in a battle after a character shows their persona for the first time. And it's interesting that they did this for the soundtrack, because the series hasn't had a proper Awakening battle theme since Persona 1. But, oh wait, no, this isn't Willpower.
No, this is the Mementos Shadow theme.
Oh yeah, this is the sub-boss theme. Okay,
Yeah.
I thought it would be. I assumed it would be playing Willpower.
Maybe it
because
played with the last battle we just had, but I definitely
Yeah.
know the song that plays when Makoto wakes up, because Makoto's Awakening is one of the best scenes in the game.
Yep.
Yeah, Willpower was playing in the last battle. This is the sub-boss theme. I'm sorry. The thing about the volume's low, so I couldn't hear it, and I assumed it would be Willpower. The thing about the sub-boss theme, though, is that it sounds less like a Persona battle theme and more like a Shin Megami Tensei boss theme.
That may be intentional.
It probably is, considering the way this game ends.
This is Atlus's most popular game now.
Oh, no, like by far. It's not even close.
For better or worse, Nocturne, Apocalypse, whatever the Shin Megami Tensei games you love, Persona is now the most popular Atlus franchise, so...
Which is funny considering it's a spin-off of their main franchise to begin with, but...
Yeah. Play a real game. Play a real Shin Megami Tensei game.
It is interesting just how quick Persona 5 kind of exploded, because I knew it would be popular kind of with the more gaming and anime crowd based on what, everything what happened after 4 came out. But for a couple of weeks after this came out, like, the entire gaming landscape was Persona 5, and that included a lot of places that don't play these sorts of games.
Yeah, like, even my friends who are pretty casual gamers, they're just like, oh my gosh, Persona 5's great, have you played it? And I'm like, yes. Why is everyone playing this game? It was mine first.
I think it says something to the state of, like, RPGs that, like, Persona 5 is really great because we don't have a lot of great RPGs anymore. We don't have a lot of great JRPGs that, like, oh, you need to play the new Tales game, you need to play the new Star Ocean game. It's not like they're as great as they used to be, or at least they're not as prolific as they used to be, so... Persona 5 being a really, really awesome RPG with great voice acting, flashy cutscenes and stuff... in 2017 kind of stands out more,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing. And, the Tokyo Mirage Sessions might have filled that niche if the story were better.
And it wasn't on a absolutely failed console.
Yeah, that too. And, I hear absolutely great things about Tokyo Mirage Sessions from a gameplay standpoint, but the story, oh boy, oh god. And, the only thing that ever went viral about that game was the whining about the censored swimsuit stuff. I'm like,
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I've got better things to think about right now.
Yeah, because the last time I've heard an RPG kind of get this kind of focus was back on, late PS1, early PS2 Final Fantasy days.
Yeah, and the PS2 and GameCube had a lot of great JRPGs that sort of sadly went unnoticed, and I'm not entirely sure why. I think there was a lot of attention focused on Final Fantasy in particular, and other games tended to go ignored where they didn't deserve to.
Yeah, you mentioned Baten Kaitos. You just started playing.
Baten Kaitos. There's also let's see.
I know it's a very different kind of RPG, but Path of Radiance got very overlooked at the time too.
Yeah.
I mean, PS2 era was the craziness of RPGs. They had everything. They had Lost Galaxy. They had friggin' Shadow Hearts. They had Dragon Quest VIII. There were so many RPGs released during that era that they all kind of blend in with each other. That it's hard. No one's gonna buy every single RPG and play through them unless you're super rich and have lots of time on your hands.
Yeah, it's kind of the problem that open world RPGs, Western RPGs, are having right now. To be honest. There's some really great ones all coming out really rapidly, and then there's some really mediocre ones that are coming out around the same time, and it's I want to recommend more people play Horizon Zero Dawn, The Witcher 3, and what else? What's another good one? But all of the attention right now is on Breath of the Wild.
Well, that's Zelda for you, so...
Yeah, because Zelda. But, it's not the only great one. It's probably not even the best one that's come out right now.
Well, I mean, it's not like Horizon got no attention and it didn't sell well or anything.
At least it had a weak head start.
It'll probably get a sequel, and I'll be looking forward to it because I want to see them do that better.
Yeah,
but,
I need to start playing through it myself.
Same.
Yeah, it's a really great game.
Also, it's just another interesting thing about Persona 5 is that it kind of capped off the first third of the year of a really good first third of the year in terms of games.
2017 has been awesome for gaming right now, and we still got Sonic Mania and stuff coming, so...
Yeah, I think May was the first month we've had that was really kind of slow, and even that had Fire Emblem Echoes and stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's taken this long for us to have a slow gaming month, because usually, the period from January to May is not necessarily dead, but laid back in terms of releases. Oh, hello, it's Pixie. Pixie is probably a demon that you're going to recognize if you played Shin Megami Tensei at all. It's the first mandatory demon to join you in Nocturne, and it's usually the first persona that you get in Persona 3 as well. It's always one of the first that you get in Persona 4, even if it's not necessarily the first. The thing about Pixie is that in Nocturne, if you keep that one Pixie that you get at the beginning of the game, I think it gains a special advantage at the end of the game. Like if you don't fuse it away or kick it out of your party at all, if you just keep it in reserves the entire game. Like even if it evolves into a high Pixie or whatever, I think it turns into a super Pixie at the end of the game. So yeah, that's a memorable thing about Pixie. But unfortunately, it's kind of a crap persona. It's in the Persona games, it's basically a fusion butt monkey.
It's almost like it's a very early game one.
Yeah. On the subject of early game personas, though, Persona 5 is probably the best game in the series about letting you use your early game personas toward the end of the game. Like, keeping them up to date with good skills and stats and everything. Like, if you just level them up at a decent pace and occasionally sacrifice personas to give them new skills and level boosts, you can keep your early game personas with you all the way until the end game. And in fact, I did this with my Arsene and several other personas for the first game, and it's not even a bad thing to do, because since you have more control over which stats grow as you sacrifice personas to strengthen these early game personas, you actually have more control over min-maxing as you do this. So your early game personas are probably going to be more effective by the end of the game if you know what you're doing. It's an interesting thing about this game's meta, but it doesn't make it like ridiculously easy to break the game over your knee like Persona 4 Golden did.
I still don't know why they called Morgana and his code name is Mona. Those are traditionally female names, but he's a male character. It's always like kind of distracting for me.
I think I'm not sure about Mona, but I think Morgana can be a unisex name. And it's not like the first time I've seen an RPG character who has a name that I thought was feminine but turned out to be unisex. Like the protagonist for Wild Arms 2, his name is Ashley.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And I always thought it was a woman's name, but no, it's actually just a unisex name that tends to be used for women.
Yeah, there are a few like that. Like Leslie is technically a unisex name.
Alex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Jamie.
Yep.
I knew so many female Jamies in high school. Anytime I'd hear my name, it'd be like, oh, no, it's for her.
All the cute boys calling out for Jamie just aren't for you.
I didn't have that particular problem, but I knew like 2 other Lewises when I was in high school, and they tended to get called out by name a lot.
Lewises, Louis.
Yeah, I'm just saying I never heard of Morgana be a male name ever. So I assumed it was a girl character, and then when I started playing the game, all of a sudden there was always he.
It doesn't help that Morgana has a female voice actress, so...
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
Well, you want to make a character sound young like a boy, it's usually a woman voicing it.
No, I get that. It's just one of those... Between the younger, higher-pitched voice and the name, it's very easy to assume that it's a female cat.
I think it's supposed to sound ambiguous, because at one point you are given the option to ask Morgana, are you actually a boy or a girl?
Yeah. I was expecting that to be the twist. like he thought he was a guy the entire time, but he's actually a girl.
Yeah.
What's going on? What's with the yelling? Are you students of Shujin? Cutting classes, are we? Huh? No. We were trying to get to school, and we ended up...
No, officer, I was just fighting a whole bunch of demons in a castle.
What?
Yeah, that castle over there!
You better not be doing...
I joke, but Ryuji literally said that.
Why would you think that?
This is why you don't say your stupid shit out loud, Ryuji.
Ryuji, you need to tone it down a little.
Y'all ready for the Phantom Thieves meeting?
Now, it's not explicitly stated, but your character is really, really eager to get out of here compared to Ryuji, who wants to keep on arguing. And, you know, the way your character acts passes it off as a really calm maneuver, but if you've been paying attention to your main character's backstory, you realize he really just doesn't want to get in trouble with the cops, considering he was just
Yeah.
put on probation a day ago.
That's pretty much the crux of everything in this game. Like, even like the big deadline of the first dungeon is you're going to get expelled, and that's going to get you in trouble. It's like, oh god. Okay, it's not some earth-shattering, like the world is ending kind of event. It's just you're going to be expelled, and that's going to get you in trouble with the cops. And it's like, oh god.
So,
oh,
Mission
god.
Director, I guess you could say everything is going according to Keikaku.
I hate that stupid meme.
What? I don't even know what that is.
I think it started with a really bad subtitle for a Death Note episode.
Yes,
Yeah,
it was.
that's-
It was. The subtitle was all according to Keikaku, and there was a translator that they just said Keikaku means plan. So why didn't you just say plan?
Was it like the same? Was it the same crappy fan sub group that did the weirdo Attack on Titans
I
subtitles?
am not sure.
It's always the fan subs.
Yeah.
So you have no intention.
Well, there's either really good fan subs or the really awful
Yup.
meaty ones.
Well, there's this one fan sub group that deliberately sets out to make their fan subs awful, and like when they did
Well,
Attack
yeah,
on
if you're
Titans,
doing it on purpose, that's a different thing entirely.
yeah,
but
it's like when they did Attack on Titans, they used this weird made-up word in place of Titans. And it wasn't the Japanese word, but it also wasn't Titans. Like, they made up their own name for it. It was dumb. And they changed the title of the show so that it used their word, and it was... Ugh. Ugh. I'm sorry. I got indigestion just thinking about those subtitles.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, the thing about Kamoshida in the real world is that he does seem really nice until he's being a deliberate asshole at you.
Oh, of course.
more like he's just a guy who knows how to actually navigate the real world.
Yeah. Like, for the first few scenes he's in, he like, you wouldn't have any reason to think he's a bad guy, except that you've already met his shadow.
Yeah.
Which I thought was clever. Like, it sets him up as this really dickish, cartoonish guy, and then you see him in the real world, and he seems like he's polite enough.
Well, of
but-
course. There's a reason he hasn't been, like, removed from his position as teacher, and it's also keeping in continuity with Persona 4, where you've met Chie, you've met Yosuke, they all seem like great people, but then you talk to their shadows, and you realize there's a lot of baggage underneath.
Yeah. Except in their cases, they are great people. They're just great people with issues. In this case, he's a really awful person who seems like a great person, and you can sort of see how people at the school respect him. But you're started off with this really awful perspective on him that reveals the truth, and it's frustrating seeing people respect this guy because you already know what's up with him.
Well, it's also a matter of he gets results, and that's all they care about.
Yeah. This is another intensely Japanese bit of politics in the sense that the schools really care about their individual reputations, and Kamoshida is the big shot in the arm for this particular school's reputation, so they want to protect him and keep him around, even if it means pretending they don't know that he's up to awful stuff.
Yeah, Japanese school culture's pretty fucked up at times.
It's true that what he did was a deplorable crime.
I mean, I know it's not all that
yeah.
awful, and this particular school is written as kind of
An extreme version.
Yeah, it's like a dystopian exaggeration of the logical extreme that those ideas can go to.
And certainly I wouldn't say, like, this is exclusive to Japan. I'm sure there's tons of, like, school abuse, like teachers abusing their kids.
Yeah.
And they're getting away with it just because, you know, they have great classes or they have a great position
They're
in the
the
school.
they're the star coach of the football team that wins state every year.
Yeah.
Like, it's relatable to no matter what culture you come from.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff injected in it that's universal, and that, I think, is a key part of what makes this game so easy to pick up and understand in other countries. But a lot of the stuff that it shows are not necessarily specific to Japan, but bigger problems in Japan. Whereas, like, I'm pretty sure in a lot of American schools, if a girl accused a teacher of abusing her, even if it was a teacher that had a pretty damn good reputation at that school, they would at least be listened to an extent. Whereas there's this feeling in this particular situation where the characters who know the truth can't actually tell anyone about it because no one will believe them in the first place. And part of that is exacerbated by the fact that Ryuji Sakamoto is one of your party members, and he's already had a problem with this teacher in the past. But
yeah, he's already being treated like an outcast, an outlaw, delinquent kind of character, like you, because you had trouble with the law as well, so you're both outsiders, you know?
Yeah. It's like if you had someone on your team like Makoto, who was the student council president, and, you know, had good grades all around and a really respectable sister and no black marks on her record whatsoever, they probably could have gone to someone, the police or whatever, and said, hey, this bad stuff is going down, maybe you should do something about it. And they might have had a shot of that actually working. But at the beginning, all you have is Kurusu and Sakamoto, and they are in the shit as it is, walking on extremely thin ice, and eventually An joins you, and An has a whole bunch of rumors about her floating around the school that don't exactly paint her as the best person. So
I love hearing all the outside conversations in school. Like, everyone thinks like you're this big badass. Everyone thinks like you're this, oh, I think he stabbed a guy. You know?
Yeah. And you know what's great about Kurusu? Another little detail that sets him apart from the other protagonists. The other protagonists talk to people. Kurusu eavesdrops.
Yeah.
It's like you rarely ever have a talk prompt, and when you do, it's usually a specific character that you already personally know. All of the conversations that you can willingly hit a button prompt to listen in on, you're listening in on, and your character will turn away from the group he's listening to, duck his head, and try to look like he's not listening, and you'll just hear whatever it is they're talking about.
It's almost lunchtime.
Hey, have you seen Japanese train stations, lady?
I hope so. She works here. But, you know, one of the things that threw me off about Ms. Kawakami here, she has Yukari's voice actress, and it's really distracting. Like, it's the same voice actress doing the same voice in the same whiny pitch that Yukari always used when she was ragging on Junpei. And it's in the same series, and it's going to be so weird if there's ever a Persona 5, Persona 3 crossover at any point.
Yeah. I mean, you always see that crossover of voiceovers ever since Persona 3, where... Actually, Persona 2 had Yukiko's voice actress as well, because she was Ulala in Eternal Punishment. But
yeah, but the difference there is that those characters hardly had actual voice dialogue, just like sound bites in battle and stuff.
Still, it's always weird when like you're watching like a TV reporter who sounds exactly like Aigis. You're like, oh, did Aigis become a TV reporter?
Yeah.
It's like they always like to bring in the same voice actors to do multiple roles. Like, Yosuke is the same voice as Persona 3's main character. It's not a big noticeable thing because the Persona 3 main character mostly says Persona names and doesn't talk at all. But they're always using the same people.
Now, here's the first seed of something that I think Persona 5 was really clever about doing for this first particular story arc. Every one of your party members has a really personal reason for going after Kamoshida, and this is yours. Even though nobody at the school should actually know about it yet, mysteriously, the moment you come to school, everyone knows about your criminal record for some reason already. And you don't really know why, the teacher doesn't know why, there's no logical reason for why, but this one kid over here is sitting with his head down. And he's the one in the white shirt, so they really want you to notice him.
Oh, I get to sit next to the window. Am I a main character?
Oh God, what happened?
Oh, I meant I get to the window seat near the back. I am a main character.
Actually, this is the first time that in the modern Persona series where your main character has actually had the main character seat. In Persona 3 and 4, you're always in the middle and toward the front. Second row middle, actually, is where you usually sit, and you're usually sitting next to one of your party members. And all of your party members, or at least a sizable chunk of your party, are conveniently in the same classroom together. In Persona 5, the only party member you share a homeroom class with is An, and you sit behind her rather than next to her.
Who's on duty today?
I thought it was a neat little change, especially considering, you know, your character has to text on his phone to talk to the person in front of him, rather than just, whispering next to him like he would have done in the previous games.
Oh god, what was in those brownies?
I was tempted to ask, is this a castle? But I thought that would have... Oh, I did ask it.
Are you sure?
My student's on drugs.
Oh man, I knew this was a bad idea.
Oh, this delinquent kid's gonna be a problem.
Hey lady, I'm right here. I can hear everything you're mumbling. Could you at least have the courtesy to wait until I've walked away to start whining to yourself? I really did not like Kawakami when I first met her when I played the game. It says a lot about her confidant storyline being well written that I actually did come to think of her as one of my favorite characters by the end of the game. Of course, it also helps that her confidant bonuses are extremely useful.
I didn't hate her. I just kind of enjoyed her I'm so fed up with this shit kind of attitude towards things.
Yeah, but I didn't I say I didn't like her, but I mean that more in the sense that I connected with my character to the point where I was thinking what he was thinking, which is, oh, will you please stop whining? I'm doing my best here, lady. Okay, but I didn't dislike her to the point where certain people will talk about Yukari as, oh, I didn't like that character. She was so whiny and she was a bitch. No, I didn't dislike her in that way. I disliked her in the sense that I felt like I was being treated unfairly by her. We're like 2 hours into this, and we're still in prologue territory, and we're still going to be in prologue territory by the end of the next part. Yes, this is why the parts had to be an hour long.
Yeah, we'd get to part 20 and we'd still be in prologue.
Yeah. It has that Kingdom Hearts 2 effect where it takes a long time to get through the opening storyline. And if I had done this with our normal length parts, it would have taken, not even kidding, probably about 2 whole weeks or 3 weeks, depending on what day slot this took.
Oh, this would have had to have been a Monday, Wednesday, Friday if we did it normally.
Yeah. It would have taken two full weeks just to get to the part where the actual gameplay started. So, yeah.
That's one thing I always have to, warn people who want to get into Persona. It's if you're going to get into Persona, you're going to have to get used to the fact that it's very talky. There are so many dialogue scenes. There are going to be huge sections of gameplay where you're not playing. You're not doing anything. You're just watching the cutscene.
The first Persona game I played was Persona 3 Portable on my PSP at work. It was a bad idea. I should have done some homework and realized what I was getting into, because I didn't even get to the first battle by the time my break ended.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous.
I like Persona, but I will admit it's not going to be an RPG for everybody. There are some RPGs that get into the action real quick, like a Final Fantasy VII or something, and then there's stuff like this that it's a slow burn,
Yeah. I mean, it's not as ridiculous as Xenosaga. Or games like that.
I've played that. I know exactly what you're talking about. Oh my god.
Yeah. I love Xenosaga. It's a great game, but that opening, man.
That's a long opening.
Yeah. Long opening, long cutscenes all over the place. It gets to be like the JRPG version of Metal Gear Solid 4 at times.
It's all right, Cosmos, let's do it. Just fight. Let's come on. I haven't played that since high school. I don't know how well it's held up. I want to play that again, honestly.
You have enough RPGs to go over.
Yeah.
I know.
There are two JRPG series that I've been wanting to get copies of so that I could go through them, and they're really long episodic adventures, and there's a Xenosaga and the Dot Hack games.
Yeah, the Dot Hack ones I hear are exceptionally long.
Yeah.
Earlier in this part, we were talking about PS2 era RPGs. Now we just mentioned 2 new ones. Xenosaga, Dot Hack. Again, there were so many back then.
Yeah.
So many.
So many.
Hey, I wasn't paying attention. What happened?
We talked with Sakamoto.
We talked at Sakamoto on the rooftop,
Sakamoto.
and maybe the attentive player noticed that there was a somewhat disorganized sort of planter garden on the rooftop for some reason. I wonder if that's an important detail for anything. Yeah, actually, they bring back Persona 4 Golden's you can plant plants and get SP recovery items from them mechanic. But it's
Yeah.
not introduced until super late in the game, so you probably won't get to use much of it. Which is unfortunate because they're really good items. I suggest you squeeze as many of those out of that chunk of the calendar as you can, because they can save your bacon at times.
Yeah, my playthrough was kind of weird because I never took advantage of a lot of the side things. I never did the exercise in the room. I didn't really touch the curry or coffee stuff at all because I was too busy focusing on the social links and trying to raise my social stats to be like smarter and more courageous and all this other stuff. And there was a lot I missed out on. I didn't even touch the sun social link. I didn't even know that the politician was a guy I could talk to and have a social link with because I didn't go to the job where you first meet him. And I just assumed he was an NPC. So there's a lot you can miss out on your first playthrough.
Yeah. Well, the game is really good about telling you where that stuff is. Like, to get the Sun Social Link, you have to work the Beef Bowl's place a couple of times. And if you talk to him, you learn he goes to the Beef Bowl place, and Morgana will tell you, hey, if you work at the Beef Bowl place, you might be able to talk to this guy and get him to know you. And get him more interested in talking to you. And that's the thing that you can do. You always know where you need to go to get certain things if you're paying attention. It's just, there's a lot, and you might not get all of it into one playthrough. You say you didn't do the coffee or the curry stuff. I didn't do the coffee or the curry stuff at all until New Game Plus, when I suddenly had all this free time because I wasn't focusing on making my personality stats any better.
Yeah, I think this game's like near impossible to quote unquote 100% your first time.
There is a guide for how to get all of the Confidants, books, and video games done in one playthrough. But I think that's the closest thing to 100% that you can do.
And that must be New Game Plus, because
No, it's a guide for a straight playthrough on a fresh
Really?
file. Yeah.
with all the leveling up you have to do for your social stats.
And here's the interesting thing. When I read the guide, the guy in the intro section said he might be revising it because he found out that there were more efficient ways to do certain things. So it's not even the best way. And that's actually pretty impressive, because one of the flaws of Persona 3 was that you needed a ridiculously specific schedule to get everything done in a fresh playthrough.
Yeah, that was always the worst part about social links in 3, was that if you were hanging out with like 3 or 2 different girls at a time, they would get jealous, and then you'd have to really work with them to get, like, not piss them off anymore.
Yeah. I think the system Persona 3 uses for that is, if you're dating girls, if you're in a romantic relationship with them, and you hang out with any other girl, the time limit until their social link goes into reverse shortens by a number of days. So you have to go have to go hang out with that character again in order to reset the time limit. And if you don't hang out with them and you hang out with other girls too much before you hang out with them again, their social link will be damaged, and you have to go repair it, which is another step for getting their social link going again. On the other hand, I don't think Persona 5 even has a reversed or broken social links at all, which is bizarre.
No, neither did 4.
Well, 4 had some social links that could go into reverse, but they wound up scaling that element back, because in production, Persona 4 was supposed to have a lot of situations where you could fuck up your social links. Like, I mean, a lot of situations where you could fuck up their social links. And there are, like, voice files in the game for a lot of stuff that would have happened, like conversations between you and your party members in dungeons if you happen to have bad social links with them. And,
if you can reverse it in 4, I've never seen that. That's never happened to me.
They cut a lot of that stuff from the game, but I think, like, the way it works is a lot more forgiving now. So, yeah, like, the most horrible thing that can happen as far as social links go is you decide to be a cheating asshole and date everyone again. And then you get the customary Valentine's Day, everything sucks and everyone is sad at you. And I don't mean mad at you, I mean they're sad at you. Naoto makes you feel like an asshole.
In Golden, anyway. Anyway, because in vanilla Persona 4, they don't really know. They never find out.
Yeah, they don't have a Valentine's Day in vanilla Persona 4, which is unfortunate, but I haven't ever done it. Like, I'm not going to play through an entire playthrough of Persona 4 just to see this for myself, but I have watched it on YouTube, and the event that plays under that circumstances.
Well, you can check it out in your free time now that this part's over.
Indeed. I'm sorry, the playthrough... I have my loop button on. I went to sleep. The calendar changed, and then I woke up at the beginning of the part, and I'm like, oh, it's still going? I thought I ended the part here. Oops.